everyone, yes, it's Teacher Ima. You're welcome to today's video. Today we are going to look at equivalent fraction. We are going to look at the definition and then how to find equivalent fractions when you are given a particular fraction to find. We are going to look at the definition of equivalent fraction and how to identify equivalent fractions. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. What is equivalent fraction? Fractions are fractions that have different numerators, different denominators, but then they represent the same value. Now let's look at examples that explain the definition of an equivalent fraction. So you can tell that these rectangles are the same. All right. Now I have two rooms here. Okay, I have two spaces here. If I occupy one, or if I shade one, we are going to call this fraction as 1 out of 2 or 1 over 2, anyhow you choose to call it. So this is the first fraction that we are going to look at. Two rooms that one has been occupied. You see that this rectangle is the same as this one. All right, we are going to divide this room into 4. So you realize that this time we have 4 rooms. When I shade 2 of the rooms, this fraction is going to be 2 out of 4. You realize that, see, the distance here is the same as the distance here. You can tell that the numerator for the first rectangle is different from the numerator for the second rectangle. The denominator for the first rectangle is different from the denominator for the second rectangle. But guess what? They represent the same value. Okay, they represent the same value. All right, let's look at the third rectangle. Let me divide it equally like that. But this time, I won't divide it into 4 rooms. I'm going to divide it into 8 rooms. Good. So let's shade 4 rooms. So we shaded 4 rooms. This room, that room, and that room. So we realize that we have shaded 4 out of 8. You see, they have the same value, but then different numerators and different denominators. That's an equivalent fraction for you. Right, let's look at another example of an equivalent fraction. So you could see some image over here. We have 4 images over here. The first part, it's having 2 rooms just as the first one we did. Okay, this time the images are circles. Okay, so it has 2 rooms, it has 2 spaces, and one has been shaded. Okay, so that will be what? 1 out of 2. All right, see, you could tell that one space that has been shaded can also be divided into 2 more. Okay, and then you can have 2 out of what? 4. Okay, that same space can be divided into 3 more. So you can have 3 out of 6. Do you get it? Good. That same space can be divided into 4 more. So you can have 4 out of what? 8. So you can tell that they are having the same value. The same parts of a circle are being shaded or are being occupied. But then they have different numerators and then different denominators. This is what we mean by equivalent fraction. And this is a perfect example of an equivalent fraction. So now we are going to look at how to identify the equivalent fractions of a given fraction. So in this case, you are going to look for the next 2 equivalent fractions of 2 out of 3. To find the next 2 equivalent fractions, or to find equivalent fractions, what you are going to do is that you are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. Let me demonstrate that. So I want the next equivalent fraction. I'm going to multiply this numerator by 2. And 2 by 2, I'm going to get 4. I'm going to multiply this denominator also by 2. And I'm going to get 6. So 4 out of 6 is the next equivalent fraction. Well, let me look for the next equivalent fraction. Well, I'm going to multiply this 4 also by 2. And I'm going to get 8 out of this 6 also by 2, and I'm going to get 12. If you take notice, you realize that I multiplied both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. Let's look at another example. Let's find the next equivalent fractions of 1/3. Let's multiply them by a different number. This time we are not using 2, but then we are using 3. So let's multiply it by 3. Here we are going to get, by 3, we are going to get 3 out of 3, also by 3, we are also going to get 9. So you realize that we use 3 to multiply at both sides. That is for the numerator and the denominator. The next equivalent fraction, we are going to multiply also by 3. And we are going to get 9/27. So we've used we have a different numerator here, a different denominator, but then we use one number to multiply them to get the next equivalent fractions. So to get an equivalent fraction of a given fraction, you are supposed to multiply the numerator and the denominator by one particular number. You can also identify equivalent fractions by division. All right, so we have 8 out of 16. I'm going to find the next 2 equivalent fractions. Remember, whatever number you use to divide the numerator, you use that same number to divide the denominator. So for the numerator 8, I'm going to divide by 2. And for the denominator 16, I'm also going to divide it by 2. 8 divided by 2 will give you 4 out of 16 divided by 2 will give you 8. So let me use that same 2 to divide 4/8. So 4 also divided by 2 will give you 2 out of 8 also divided by 2 will give you 4. So the next 2 equivalent fractions that I got were 4/8 and then 2/4. These are the next 2 equivalent fractions of 8/16. Let's look at our very last example on equivalent fraction. So we have 2 out of 4. We are going to find the next 3 equivalent fractions. All right, so let's multiply by any number. So let's take the number 5. Let's multiply the numerator by 5. And 5 by 2, we are going to get 10 out of, let's also multiply the denominator by 5, and we are going to get 20. So you see, we've gotten one equivalent fraction. You realize that we use the same number to multiply both the numerator and the denominator. Let's look for the next equivalent fraction. We can choose to use another number. Let's use the number 7. Let's multiply it by 7. But if you are using 7, make sure you multiply the denominator also by 7. Remember, use the same number to multiply the numerator and the denominator. So 7 by 10, we are going to get 70. And then 7 by 20, we are going to get 140. So you realize that if you divide, this by 7, you are going to get 10. And if you divide 140 also by 7, you are going to get 20. Well, if you divide the 10 over here, if you divide it by 5, you are going to get 2. And then if you divide the 20 by 5, you are going to get 4. So on this gesture, we can realize that there are 2 ways to identify equivalent fractions. It's either you multiply or you divide. Please don't add or subtract. You can multiply or you can divide. All right, we've come to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed the lesson, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up and let me hear from you at the comment section. I want to thank you very much for your support. So until we meet next time for the next lesson on fraction, it's your favorite teacher, Teacher Yuma. See you later. Bye bye.